Hello, this is Mayor John Hamilton, and I want to thank you all for participating in this 36th annual Women's History Month celebration. A wonderful gathering. Usually we're in a big room together, cheering, great energy, excitement, celebrating Women's History Month at a luncheon. We can't do that this year, but we're doing our very best thanks to all who organized this event, and thanks to all of you who are participating in it. On behalf of the whole city of Bloomington, I want to express our thanks, shower the honors so well deserved by our three award winners this year, Penny Caudle, Kathleen Engel-Weber, and Abby Ang, three extraordinary individuals who have made Bloomington a much better place through their dedication and energy and experience and commitment and perseverance. And thank you all on this celebration of valiant women of the vote, refusing to be silenced, reminding us of the importance of the suffragettes of 100 years ago and to those who are working to support voting rights so importantly today. I also want to welcome to Bloomington, one is from Bloomington, Dr. Valerie Grimm here. We're so glad to have you here speaking, and thanks for your research and leadership, African American rural stories. Thank you so much. And also Heather McTeer-Toney. We appreciate you being here and sharing your word. I feel kindred spirit with so much being a lawyer and having worked in environmental protection and a mayor. So welcome to town, and thank you so much for being part of our celebration today. All of Bloomington celebrates Women's History Month. Again, congratulations to the winner, and let's have a great celebration.
Thank you, Mayor Hamilton, for that introduction and for all that you do to support women in the Bloomington community. I'm Jennifer Sims, Commissioner and Chair of the 2021 Women's History Month celebration. I'd like to introduce our keynote speaker for today's event, Heather McTeer-Toney. Heather served as the first African American, first female, and youngest mayor of Greenville, Mississippi. She was appointed by President Barack Obama to serve as the regional administrator for the Environmental Protection Agency's Southeast region from 2014 to 2017. Known for her energetic and genuine commitment to people, her work has made her a national figure in public service, diversity, and community engagement. Heather led the Moms Clean Air Force field team for 2 years and worked on government policy initiatives and the Moms and Mayors program. She holds a bachelor's degree from Spelman College in Atlanta and a law degree from the Tulane University School of Law. Heather is currently serving as the Environmental Justice Liaison for the Environmental Defense Fund. Welcome, Heather.
Hello, and thank you so much for joining us today for the Women's Day event. It is a wonderful, amazing opportunity to come and speak before all of you today. My name is Heather McTeer-Toney. I'm the Climate Justice Liaison at the Environmental Defense Fund and also Senior Advisor to Moms Clean Air Force. And if there's anyone who's excited about celebrating Women's History Month, it's me, because we have so much to celebrate. We've come through so much in 2020 that now is the time for us to stop and reflect, but also prepare for how we're going to move forward in the future, and to do so in a place of equity, a place of unity, and one where women are certainly heard, respected, and moving forward in all the work that we have to do. I want to first stop and say congratulations to the award winners today. You have done a remarkable job, and it's special to be recognized for all of your achievement. And so I say congratulations to each of you, and I know that you will continue on with such stellar work in your community. Let's jump right in, ladies and gentlemen who may be here with us as well. When I think about the question of what does it really mean to be silenced, and the theme for today, valiant women of the vote, refusing to be silenced, I reflect, and I have to ask myself, and you consider the same question, what does that really mean? Does it mean being cut off mid-sentence, being mansplained to, as we have experienced often in our careers? Is it being told to, shh, the adults are talking in the room? Or does it include being kept out of conversations, being invisible to your supervisors? Are there varying degrees of being silenced? Or is it something much deeper? Is it being ignored for so long that you don't even recognize that you have a means of communication? Part of it is acknowledging that someone other than yourself has the authority to determine whether or not you're actually heard. And that, my friends, is key. Who have we given this authority to and why? And how do we take it back? I submit to you today that women, and particularly Black women, as I am one, have made it a superpower to be invisible, but we've never been silenced. When I think back to growing up in Mississippi and all of the stories that I not only heard from my father, who was a retired civil rights advocate, my mother, who was a retired school teacher, but the friends and family and neighbors that raised me, how often there were Black cooks in kitchens who were invisible, but certainly heard everything that was taking place in households that they kept. Or secretaries who work in offices and kept schedules of their male supervisors and notes of all the interactions and may have been invisible, but they certainly were not silenced, as they were the gatekeepers and knew a lot more information than maybe some people wanted them to know. Or I think with laughter of all of the pastors' wives I know that actually wrote the sermons that their husbands gave. They may have been invisible, but they were never silent. When I think back to March 3rd, 1913, the women's suffrage movement, and how the parade organizers, they pulled together marchers from across the country to come in the spirit of protest and to really talk through and show force with the presence of political organization to say that we have been excluded. We are not given the right to vote. And the goal there was to march and to lobby and to demand the amendment to the United States Constitution that would actually give women the right to vote. Remember, at that time in 1913, Black men had the right to vote before all women had the right to vote. But interestingly enough, when we really dig into this, we know that there was a bit of disparity. There were a few issues because there are very few references to Black women as part of the march. But there were Black women who were there and a part of the march. There are people who credit Nellie Mae Quander. She was a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. She was a founder, an educator, and she was a student and graduate of Howard University. She wrote a letter to the organizers, and she shared with them that there were a number of college women at Howard University who wanted to participate in the procession, but did not want to participate if they were going to be subject to discrimination or were going to have a place in the back. This letter was written on Alpha Kappa Alpha letterhead, and as a member of the organization, I have seen it reflected in our history as a space where we refuse to be quiet or silenced, even being at the back of the group to be acknowledged. In response, there was a letter that was sent back. And there was a lot of discussion about whether or not African-American women would be encouraged to participate in the march, specifically because there seemed to be such angst against having Black women and white women side by side. In fact, Alice Stone Blackwell, she was a part of this march and editor of the Women's Journal. She wrote back to the organizer, Alice Paul, and she said, in quote, "I'm glad that colored women are allowed to register for the procession. It would be a shame if they were not. But I agree with you in hoping that not many will do so in view of the wicked and irrational color prejudice so prevalent in Washington." They had to send out a special letter specifically to ensure that parade committee organizers were going to be open to the idea of allowing Black women to participate alongside them, because the feeling was that from the committee, it had been so strongly urged that Black women not participate, they had to make some type of statement. On the date of the actual event, almost 50 women came and participated, many of them in their cap and gowns from Howard University as members of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. They came together and they marched as one unit. Members of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated also came and they marched, and they were a part and noted this part that they played in history. Now, while we don't exactly know the name of every single person, what we do know is that there were very famous women who were instrumental in participating and instrumental in talking about how important it was to include the voices of all women in the right to vote and not leave anyone out. Mary Church Terrell and Ida B. Wells were two key figures in this movement, and they too were forced to walk in the back. Now, Mary Church Terrell, she marched at the back of the parade with the African-American marchers, but Ida B. Wells was different. She absolutely refused. In fact, she waited until the parade began, and then she jumped in with a white delegation from Chicago, and she kept marching by. You see, this is a classic example of how, when faced with the idea that someone else has the authority or puts themselves in a position to silence one's voice, we make the final determination. And I share that story and I share that history because it is so important for us to understand the power of unity today. Our nation has been torn apart from diverse perspectives and diverse thought and feeling. But as women, it is critically important for us to elevate every voice, because together, working together, we ensure that no voice goes silenced, because we are the ones who give the authority for ourselves. I think of it as being like the wind. You don't see me, but you definitely feel my presence. I may be invisible to you, but you hear my voice. None of the 5 physical senses may give any indication that I am here, but my vote, it proves my relevance. And we should all operate this way. And data shows us this. The Center for American Progress at Rutgers University constantly keeps up with data on how women engage in politics, how women think about policy and ideals, and they have been keeping up with this information since at least 1980. And since that time, we have seen that women are registered to vote at higher rates than men, some years to the tune of 10 million more voters. At the same time, we're still under attack in terms of attempts to silence our voices. In response to the historic turnout of 2020, 33 states have introduced or pre-filed some type of restrictive bill this year, and it's just March. 165 restrictive bills to keep people from voting as freely as they should be able to have already been introduced or in some way advocated for in over half the states in our country. And don't be confused, voter suppression impacts women and particularly people of color disproportionately. Let's look at a few examples. Exact match laws. Those are places where it says you have to have an exact match of your name in order to vote. What about those of us in the South who have double names, Patricia Ann or Mary Catherine, and it could be a hyphen between it? And you can't vote because there's not an exact match of your name, simply because there's not enough character space to put all the names that your mother and father blessed you with on the card. Or how about those of us who've experienced divorce or change of name or separation, or in some way have had to shift or alter our own name and are no longer allowed to vote or have to jump through hoops just to exercise our right to vote? Laws on limits of times and days that polling places are open impact women who have to have childcare or are in some way trying to figure out how to go and vote either with their children or move around the times of school and work. It makes it more difficult for them. What about the closure of polling places? Because since 2013, over 1,600 polling places have been closed in the United States of America. These are disproportionate impacts to women and attempts to silence our relevance on policy and our vote. Women are climate voters, and that's what's of interest to me because I truly believe that climate justice is the social justice movement of our time. Climate justice intersects with everything: healthcare, the economy, how we deal with voting, and how education impacts our children. Climate justice intersects every single social justice movement of our time, whether it's the impacts of extreme weather events, food shortages that are being experienced in agrarian parts of our country, or jobs that are created or are not created. It intersects with climate, and women understand that. In fact, in 2020, healthcare, the economy, and climate change were the top issues for women. So when women are impacted and are not given the same opportunity and access to voting, or they are stopped through restrictive bills for voting, it is an attempt to silence our voice. So what do? What are the next steps? I submit to you that we do the exact same thing that Nellie Mae Quandra did back in 1913. We do the exact same thing that Mary Church Terrell and Ida B. Wells did when they pushed themselves into a space where they were included and they were present, but they were attempted to be silenced, even in a situation and with a group that was doing the right thing and trying to get women to vote. We vote without question. We vote early, we vote often, we vote every election, we vote every time, we take people, we register others. We let absolutely nothing stop us from voting. That is number one, whether it is local, state, or federal, whether it is school board or president. We make sure that we exercise our right to vote. Even when we don't know if we're voting for the right person or who the people are, or if their issues align with ours, not voting is a vote. So we educate ourselves and we engage in the process that we so heavily fought for. We also serve. There is a special place that women have a great opportunity to really show forth our knowledge and our expertise in policy and in politics without being elected. It's serving on boards and commissions. And across every city, state, and our country, there are thousands of boards and commissions where there are needed people to be appointed either by a mayor, a governor, and yes, even the President of the United States of America. These boards and commissions are spaces where women can come and serve in a policy decision-making space and affect some of the ideals around voting, around climate, that are so necessary to how we conduct business in this country. So I challenge each and every one of you, look for a board or commission. If you can serve as a Girl Scout leader, if you can serve as the treasurer for your church, if you can serve as a PTA president, you can serve on the sustainability board or the transportation commission, or even the airport authority for your local community. And I have a special little thought here. If you have a climate or environmental focus, it's even more important that you do so, because climate and environment layers every sector of our work today. We train. We must also teach and mentor. We must also bring someone else up alongside us. I recently had a wonderful opportunity to testify before the House Financial Services Committee. It was a congressional testimony, and while I have done several of them, this one was a little different because I was talking in the capacity of climate risk and disclosures in corporations and why it's necessary in order to protect communities of color and why it's necessary to protect markets and investors. And after I gave my initial testimony, I sat for almost 2 hours listening to others discuss diversity and equity and inclusion, but not ask me any questions, even though I was the expert on diversity, equity, and inclusion. This had never happened before. I've testified a number of times, never have I testified and not been asked a question. It's a unique experience. And so towards the end of the testimony, as I was beginning to feel a little down and maybe I was not as up on my game as I thought I was, all of a sudden, the chairwoman for the House Financial Services Committee appeared. The chairwoman is Chairwoman Maxine Waters, and she came from another press conference to this committee meeting for one reason, and that one reason was to ask me a question and to ask me specifically to give my expertise and my opinion on this particular issue. It was a powerful moment for me because I recognized immediately that the great Maxine Waters had yielded me her time. But it was also a lesson. And it was a lesson that as women, it is important for us to watch out for and ensure that we are protecting each other's voices, that we elevate every time we have an opportunity, another woman's voice in a space where she may not be able to elevate it herself. In that instant, I was grateful that Congresswoman Maxine Waters was mentoring me and showing that even she would stop and take time to ensure that my voice was heard. We must continue to honor and uplift each other day by day, minute by minute, even finding the places where we may not agree, but do have synergy such that we are protecting our voices, protecting our communication, and doing it in an authentic and genuine way that shows we're not silenced, because we've not given anyone the authority to quiet our voices. We will vote, we will serve, and we will train, because as we move forward into this next generation and this next movement of work that is so necessary, our daughters are watching us, and we must give them a good and solid example. I am so grateful that you all are committed to doing and joining in this journey with me, even here in Mississippi, all the way to Indiana, from coast to coast, regardless of our race, our political party, our socioeconomic statuses, that we are joined together in this effort of protecting our voices, raising our children, and moving with force, marching into the next generation. I am grateful that I've had an opportunity to spend this time with you, and hopefully next time it'll be in person. I wish you well and good health, and enjoy a beautiful rest of this Women's Day celebration.
Good morning, afternoon, or whenever you're watching this. My name is Ashley Hazelrig, and I am the co-chair for the City of Bloomington's Commission on the Status of Women. It is a great honor for me to be the one to recognize our emerging leader this year. Her name is Abby Ang, and she was selected for her community work as it centers around our most vulnerable in Bloomington, specifically for the benefit of women. She is a planning committee member for the People's Cooperative Market. She's a board member for Enough Bloomington. She's the founder and organizer for No Space for Hate. She's also the vice president of the Monroe County National Organization for Women and the founder of the Monroe County Mutual Aid. I could go on and on about her accolades, but I will let her speak for herself. On behalf of the commission, congratulations, Abby.
My name is Abby Ang, and I'm the lead organizer of Monroe County Area Mutual Aid. There are many others that I'm involved in, but I am just focusing on this one for the purposes of this award. The Emerging Leader Award I have received is due to my work with Monroe County Area Mutual Aid. So Monroe County Area Mutual Aid was begun at the beginning of the pandemic back in March when shutdowns started to happen. And we found a need to connect people to resources such as unemployment, food pantries, and other things they needed. So we had a resource guide to point people towards rent and utility assistance. We also offer personalized help through the group. We also help with pantry drop-offs, phone bills, and other small but essential expenses that resources like Township Trustees, Salvation Army, St. Vincent de Paul, and other groups don't necessarily help with. I've been inspired to start Monroe County Area Mutual Aid because I've been involved in advocacy for a long time, and I'd built trust in the community already due to my work with organizations like No Space for Hate, which is a group that confronts and researches white supremacist activity in Bloomington. And through that work, I had already a lot of connections and knew of a lot of resources, especially related to farming and food insecurity. And so from that point, it was just a matter of setting up a hub or a Facebook group where people could get in touch with those resources and with each other in a more accessible way. I would like to encourage people to get involved with the Monroe County Area Mutual Aid Facebook group. It's a really amazing hub for people to find out ways that they can plug into the community, get connected with different volunteer opportunities, or just help needs that people need filled. I would say that there is no one person that has been the biggest influence on my desire to advance women's issues, but rather groups of people and organizations. So Monroe County National Organization for Women, which is a local chapter of the National Organization for Women, has really shaped the way I've approached women's issues. And I've been involved with this organization for about 3 years now in a variety of fashions, and I'm now the vice president. And it's shown me the ways in which different issues such as racial justice, environmental justice, and so on are all part of this collective struggle for women's rights. There are a few main goals that I hope to accomplish or become involved in with regard to advancing the status of women. I've gotten involved with a group called the National Asian Pacific American Women's Forum, and there's a new chapter that's been formed in Indiana just last year. So it's important that we advance racial justice because racial justice is also an issue that impacts lots of women. And so in my work with that group, we look at how Asian American and Pacific Islander women are disproportionately impacted by not having good healthcare access or comprehensive sex education. And one example is the HEAL Act, which is Health Equity and Access Under the Law. And it's an act for immigrant women and children, and it's a big piece of legislation that we'll be trying to advocate for. I also have been involved a lot with Enough is Enough movement in Bloomington, which started back in June when a group of young Black women came together to advance causes of racial justice for Black Americans. And that's work that I find incredibly inspiring. I would like to thank my family for helping to get me to this point, as well as my dissertation advisor in the Department of English. And as I'm finishing my dissertation, I've been very grateful to have my department's support in doing what would be considered extracurricular work. I'm also very grateful to the women in the organizations I've been in, such as No Space for Hate research team, Monroe County National Org for Women, NAPA, for helping to support and sustain me.
The Toby Strout Lifetime Contribution Award is named for the former director of Middleway House and former Bloomington Commission on the Status of Women Commissioner, Toby Strout. This award recognizes a woman whose work has significantly advanced the status of women through leadership and service. The winner of the 2021 Toby Strout Lifetime Contribution Award is Kathleen Weber. Kathleen Weber has worked tirelessly as an adjunct professor, founder of a woman-owned business, activist, ally, mentor, and social worker. She has dedicated her life to supporting people who live with dementia, as well as their families. Kathleen became a social worker at the Bloomington Hospital in 2003, and later served as the director for the Bloomington Hospital Alzheimer's Resource Center. She is founder and director of the Better Day Club, an innovative day program for people with Alzheimer's. In 2011, she co-founded Fair Talk to fight against HJR6, the proposed constitutional amendment that would have permanently banned any legal recognition of same-sex relationships, including marriage. In 2016, she was the recipient of the Girls Inc. Bold Award for her contributions in the community that support and inspire girls to be strong, smart, and bold. On behalf of the Bloomington Commission on the Status of Women, we thank you for all of the service that you have done in our community.
Good afternoon. My name is Kathleen Weber, and I'm a licensed clinical social worker here in Bloomington. For the past 8 years, I have owned and run 2 small businesses. The first is Better Day Counseling and Consulting. That's a private counseling practice focusing on geriatrics, dementia, and family caregiving. I also designed and ran Better Day Club, which is an adult day program for people living with dementia. I'm honored to be chosen as the 2021 Toby Strout Lifetime Contribution Award recipient by the City of Bloomington's Commission on the Status of Women. To receive an award modeled after the powerful and decades-long advocacy and hard work of Toby Strout means a lot to me. I believe in the power of community. I believe in reaching out to build bridges, to help one another, and work for the common good. Whether formally or informally, I don't think anybody does that better than a dedicated and determined group of women. The community work I have come to love has been an organic process of seeing and responding to need in the various communities of people that I've participated in. Working in healthcare and aging, the needs of caregivers who are by large women, and for respectful, dignified, and co-created care of people living with dementia has not just been a service gap, but a gaping chasm of need in our community. On a personal level, my community work with the LGBTQIA plus advocacy has been an outgrowth of seeing people that I deeply respect, work with, and have been lifelong friends with, not just disenfranchised, but have their rights targeted through focused federal and state legislation. So working in aging, I had a very clear view of what a lifetime of inequality and disenfranchisement could look like in terms of aging well and safely. And as a social worker and as a friend, then I knew that allies had to speak up for change. And so in that community work, that's something that I have tried to do on a regular basis whenever I could. There are definitely more than a few folks that I would like to thank. None of us do things alone. We work and accomplish things together in community. I would like to thank my husband, John. Without John's sacrifices, countless hours of working for free, putting up with crazy hours and ridiculous requests, and his unwavering support in every way possible, I most certainly would not be talking with you today. I also really want to thank my friend and colleague, Doug Johnson. He was a huge encourager, a business mentor, made a financial investment to make it possible for Better Day Club to exist. And I'll be forever grateful to him for that opportunity. I also want to thank the many women in all the circles I'm privileged to be a part of. Each one of these circles of women has empowered, role modeled, supported, and especially in this past year has just been a saving grace for me and for many of us in these circles over and over. There are far too many of these women to ever thank personally, but you do all know who you are. And I love and appreciate you so very much, and your presence in my life is a gift.
Hello, my name is Shruti Rana. I'm a commissioner on the Bloomington Commission on the Status of Women. I'm honored today to be able to announce the Women of the Year Award for 2021. The Woman of the Year award is presented to a woman who has improved the quality of life for other women in our community through inspiration, community service, or professional accomplishments which go above or beyond normal job responsibilities. She serves as a positive role model for girls and women and has made outstanding contributions to our community. I'm pleased to announce that this year's Woman of the Year award for 2021 goes to Penny Caudill. Congratulations, Penny. Penny currently serves as the Monroe County Health Department Administrator. She has served the community for decades, but has gone above and beyond during this pandemic year. She has provided significant support to the City of Bloomington by leading the charge for the COVID-19 response. She serves on the MCCSC COVID-19 response team, works with IU fraternities and sororities to stop the spread of COVID-19, and provides strategic direction on COVID-19 testing, public health campaigns, and vaccine distribution. Congratulations again, Penny. We are thrilled to be able to make this award to someone like you who has done so much for our community and has such a bright future ahead.
I am Penny Caudill. I'm the administrator at the Monroe County Health Department. As the administrator of the health department in a pandemic, this year has been both memorable and challenging. Public health is often hidden, but in the midst of a pandemic, we are certainly in full view. Leading the department in the effort to educate and empower our residents to protect themselves, to protect others, is truly rewarding work. But the public health system has been stretched to unforeseen limits. I'm proud to be a part of the Monroe County team. They've enabled me to communicate and provide guidance to our community, to get testing sites and vaccinations in our community. We've been able to provide educational opportunities and trainings for businesses. I couldn't do this job if it weren't for my colleagues at the health department and without the county leadership that I've had supporting me. I believe that my life experiences and my work have given me empathy, a level of insight. It's helped me see that we all struggle in some way, and to remember that there is always someone worse off than you, and that your life can change at any moment without notice. I was inspired by my teachers all through school, from my elementary teacher, my third grade teacher, Mrs. Wise, to my freshman in high school teacher, Mr. Adler, who really is the person I would say motivated me to focus on health education. I've been blessed with many good role models, my mother, my sister, aunts, some of whom were single mothers. Women from our church like Ruth Welsh when I was a teenager, mentors in public health like Ann Reese, all smart, strong, independent, and caring women. When I think about my career and I look back on that, the person who stands out as the influencer in advancing the status of women is Charlotte Zitlow. She has been an example of grace and leadership, of kindness and compassion. She's led the way for me and many other women who serve in local government today, and these women continue to influence me. I strive to be a leader and a good partner in improving access to healthcare, care that's not just easy to find, but it's also easy to get to pay for, that it's somewhere where you feel listened to and that you're heard, that people understand and truly care for you. I want women to be empowered to take care of themselves. I want everyone, regardless of their gender identity, their education, their perceived status, to feel their value and that they are loved. And finally, I would say I want to be someone who supports other women, who encourages both growth and big dreams. Well, there are so many people that I would like to thank. I cannot name them all, but I will try to give you a few. First and foremost, my family. My husband, Pat, my son, Zach, my whole family for being supportive through the years, but especially this year. Dr. Sharp, the health officer, and the Board of Health, my county government colleagues from the health department to the emergency management department to the commissioners and county council to other department heads for their ongoing support of public health. Community partners like IU Health, the chamber, schools, all kind and supportive this past year and always. And finally, I would say my health department team with a special COVID thanks to Christina, Kathy, and Margie from our legal department. I'm honored to be just considered for this award, and I've known several of the past recipients of Women of the Year, and I am truly thrilled to be among them.
Hello everyone, my name is Nana Amor Remy and I am a visiting assistant professor at the Department of African American and African Diaspora Studies here in Bloomington, Indiana. I am highly privileged to be introducing the keynote speaker for the 2021 Women's Leadership Development event, Dr. Valerie Grimm. Dr. Valerie Grimm is the former chairperson and professor of African American and African Diaspora Studies at Indiana University, Bloomington. Her research and publishing area concentrates on 20th and 21st century African American rural history. Dr. Grimm has lectured nationally and internationally and is a recognized scholar throughout continental North America, Europe, South America, Africa, and the Caribbean. Currently, she has completed with publication pending a manuscript titled Between Paternalism and Self-Determination, Rural African American Life at Brooks Farm, Mississippi. Her current co-edited book project, Unleashing Suppressed Voices on College Campuses, Diversity Issues in Higher Education, is due for release in spring 2021. She continues her research and writing on other projects and has published widely in leading journals and well-received anthologies. Dr. Grimm is also the recipient of numerous grants and awards for scholarship, teaching, and service. Ladies and gentlemen, shall we welcome our keynote speaker, Dr. Valerie Grimm. Thank you.
I'm Valerie Grimm, a professor in the Department of African American and African Diaspora Studies at Indiana University, Bloomington. Before I do my presentation, I would like to begin with a few thank yous. First, thank you to the City of Bloomington for the invitation to give this lecture in honor of Women's History Month. Second, as part of this program, I also thank the Bloomington Commission on the Status of Women, a group who organized this Women's Leadership Development event. And of course, lastly, I also appreciate Dr. Nana Amor Remy, who reached out to me and asked that I serve as a speaker for 2021's Women's Leadership Development event. This year's national theme is Valiant Women of the Vote, refusing to be silenced. Thus, the title of my presentation is Valiant Woman of the Vote, Fannie Lou Hamer and the Fight for Racial Justice and Human Rights Opportunities for African Americans. Valiant Woman of the Vote, Fannie Lou Hamer and the Fight for Racial Justice and Human Rights Opportunities for African Americans. I would like to begin this presentation with a quote from a speech Ms. Hamer gave in Greenwood, Mississippi in the fall of 1963. The speech was titled, "I Don't Mind My Light Shining." This is the portion that I would like to open with. Quote, "So, as long as you know you're going for something, you put up a life, that it can be like Paul. Say, I fought a good fight, and I've kept the faith. You know, it had been a long time, people. I have worked as hard as anybody. I have been picking cotton and would be so hungry. And one of the poison things about it, wondering what I was going to cook that night. But you see, all of them things was wrong, you see? And I have asked God, I said, now, Lord, and you have too. Ain't no need to lie and say that you ain't said, open a way for us. Said, please make a way for us, Jesus. Said, where I can stand up and speak for my race and speak for these hungry children. And he opened a way, and all of them mostly backing out. You see, he made it so plain for us. He sent a man in Mississippi with the same name that Moses had to go to Egypt and tell him to go down in Mississippi and tell Ross Barnett to let my people go. And you know, I feel good. I feel good. I never know today what's going to happen to me tonight, but I do know as I walk alone, I walk with my hand in God's hand. And you see, you know the ballot is good. If it wasn't good, how come he trying to keep you from it? And he's still using it. Don't be foolish, folks. They going in there by droves and droves. They had guards to keep us out of there the other day, and dogs. Now, if that's good for them, I want some of it too. End of quote. Fannie Lou Hamer in Greenwood, Mississippi, fall of 1963, in a speech delivered at a Freedom Rally vote called, I Don't Mind My Light Shining. This is an incredibly important moment in Fannie Lou's history in her life. As you know, or may not know, she was born in 1917, the 20th child to Lou Ella and James Lee Townsend in the Yazoo, Mississippi Delta region. She was born in 1917. She started to pick cotton as a kid, as early as at the age of 6, while managing to also complete some years of school. By her teenage years, Hamer was known as a tremendously effective laborer in the picking of cotton. She could pick hundreds of pounds of cotton. It's important to understand how Fannie Lou Hamer's background influenced her political activism. In her book written on the civil rights movement, Alda Morris talks about a concept called tripartite domination. Tripartite domination involves social, political, and personal domination, situations that become so intolerable that one refuses any longer to take it and begin to stand up against it. It's within this context that I place her political work, that she was so personally sick and tired of the oppression, the domination, the murdering, the killing of Black people in the South and in the Mississippi Delta, that she started to stand up. But she also stood up because of what happened to her personally, which was forced sterilization. She speaks about hysterectomies being formed on Black women and on herself against their will and without their knowledge, proving that they didn't even own their bodies or what happened to their bodies in the Mississippi Delta. She participated with the SNCC Nonviolent Coordinating Committee in the state of Mississippi, in the Mississippi Delta. She attempted in 1962 as well to go to register to vote in Indianola, Mississippi, which was the county seat for the county of Sunflower. She and another man was allowed to take the test, but they failed it. The historical experiences of Blacks in the Delta was often that there was no test that they were going to pass. They were also intimidated once they arrived back to rural Mississippi when they were stopped by the police and the bus driver was arrested for driving the wrong bus, the wrong color of the bus. And when the bus was stopped, Hamer realized that this was a catastrophe that they were going to have to deal with. She began to sing "This Delight of Mine" and "Go Tell It on the Mountain." These were songs that inspired her spiritually to keep going no matter what. But the bus driver ended up going to jail and they worked together to get him out of jail. What this meant for her was facing punishment on the plantation where she lived on Marlowe's plantation. Ultimately, he gave her an ultimatum: stop your activism or you will be forced to move. Ultimately, she did, living from families throughout the Delta until they were able to get a home of their own. Fannie Lou Hamer's greatest story, among the many that she told about what she was living through in the Delta, really is the well-known situation where she was arrested in Winona, Mississippi and beaten to the end of her life in a jail cell. And this happened to her and a group of people when they were returning from South Carolina, getting training in order to learn how to organize correctly and appropriately in the Mississippi Delta to register people to vote. She discussed how her body felt during those beatings. I heard that story as a child. I grew up in the Mississippi Delta where Fannie Lou Hamer was doing her work. I grew up in the 1960s. I recall hearing that story in a church. And I recall on the one hand, when I heard that story, how much fear I felt that someone could beat your body like that and nothing happened to them. But on the other hand, I was tremendously encouraged by a woman who had the courage to stand and to continue to tell that story in the Delta, to encourage Black people to continue to fight for the vote, to continue to fight for better education, to continue to fight for better economic situation for their children. Fannie Lou Hamer's belief in politics led her to start a political organization in 1963, which was called the Mississippi Freedmen Democratic Party. Fannie Lou Hamer and the Mississippi Freedmen Democratic Party fought against discrimination. They fought against being unseated at the National Democratic Party convention that was taking place in 1964 in Atlantic City. People who did not like Fannie Lou Hamer's politics worked very hard to keep them from being a part of that national convention. They had hoped that the Credential Committee, which was a part of the Democratic Convention, would allow them to be seated. However, they chose not because President Lyndon Johnson, according to the record, did not want the Mississippi Freedmen Democratic Party engaged in such a high visible way. The compromise was that they could have two seats and two persons seated. Fannie Lou Hamer didn't hesitate. She didn't believe in compromising with what she called evil. She didn't believe that you could bring any good out of sustained situation where oppression continued to dominate people's lives. So she and the members of the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party continued to fight on and to push for objectives in the state of Mississippi to improve the lives of Black people. Within this framework, it is also important that I would like to intersect Fannie Lou Hamer's civil rights work with her human rights work. Her human rights work did not get as much publicity as her civil rights work because by the 1970s, the country had moved in the other direction. And because we had the Voting Rights Act of 1965 and the Civil Rights Act of 1964, there were those in the country who thought the history of oppression had been resolved. I want you to listen to her words as they relate to her human rights work in this context. About land, Hamer said, land too is important in the 1970s. and beyond as we move toward our ultimate goal of total freedom. Because for Hamer, if a community is to build wealth, if a community is to prosper, it must have land, because land is the basis for autonomy, land is the basis for security, land is the basis for freedom, land is the basis for liberation. Continually, her thinking on human rights has to do with food. What Hamer decided to do was to start a Freedom Farm cooperative in 1969 with a donation she received from an organization called Merger for Merger, a charitable organization based in Wisconsin. With that $10,000, she purchased 40 acres of prime Delta land. Quote, it was her attempt to empower poor Black farmers and sharecroppers who were at the mercy of local white landowners, since local and state power structure did nothing to alleviate the economic burden experienced by poor Black and white families. It is important to note, though, how Hamer is linking food to human rights, that human beings have a right to healthy food, decent food, have a right to be able to feed themselves and care for their families. She felt the same way about housing. Again, the intersection of human rights, the right to life means also having the right to have a decent place to sleep, have a decent place to feed and care for your children. Hamer activism continued as well as she pushed for self-improvement as at the local government area. She believed, quote, community living and group decision-making is local self-government. It is this type of community self-government that has been lost over the decades and thus created decay in our poor rural areas in the South and our northern ghettos. Fannie Lou Hamer had a lot to say about economics. About economics, she said, quote, economically, the Black community is crippled, mainly because of non-capital. She understood clearly the connection between economics, having the right to earn a living wage, a decent income, in order to prevent children of color from serving at the mercy of children of power. Fannie Lou Hamer was a profound, prolific, thought-provoking speaker when it came to the educational needs of Black children in the Delta. Fannie Lou Hamer didn't have a great opportunity to attend school. She went to school some years, of course, but the school session was always organized around cotton chopping and cotton picking times. Fannie Lou Hamer was a valiant woman. She fought for the vote. She fought for economics. She fought for education. She fought against racial injustices. She stood up even when they were beating her down. She stood up. She walked tall even when she had polio. She stood in ways where many of us don't understand what it took for someone like her in the Mississippi Delta, facing all forms of dominance and oppression, to push against the system that required Black people to bow their heads and lower their backs every day to the demands of those who were in power. Activism takes its toll on the mind, and it takes its toll on the body, and it takes its toll in other kinds of ways. Fannie Lou Hamer in 1977 died. She died from complications associated with heart disease and cancer. But those who write about her life also note that there had to have been a tremendous impact of those brutal beatings on her body in the Winona jail. Her legacy lives on in Rural, Mississippi at a memorial site that they have erected in Fannie Lou Hamer's honor. I'd like to invite you to consult some sources if you're more interested in Fannie Lou Hamer's life. There are a list of them that I will cite here briefly, and hope that you will have time to read some. The main one I would like to cite is actually her own speeches. Her speeches have been collected and put in a volume by Megan Parker Brooks and David Hucks called The Speeches of Fannie Lou Hamer, To Tell It Like It Is. But there are also biographies written about her life One written by Kay Mills called This Little Light of Mine, The Life of Fannie Lou Hamer. Another one written by Shana Kali called For Freedom's Sake. If you read any of these sources, and especially her speeches, you will be encouraged greatly today, especially given the struggle with supremacists, dominance, oppression, and all other kinds of social issues we have around injustices in our country today. Again, I would like to thank Bloomington Commission. I would like to thank the women's organization that invited me today. And I hope you have learned something about a woman who has had a tremendous impact on my life. I started school in Fannie Lou Hamer's Head Start in Rural, Mississippi at 3. I didn't stop going to school until I had a PhD in my 20s. That's how much I value what she did for us in the Mississippi Delta. Thank you.
It was truly inspiring to be reminded of the incredible achievements and far-reaching accomplishments women are undertaking here locally. My name is Landry Cole, and I am the co-chair of the Commission on the Status of Women. On behalf of the Commission and its volunteers, we would like to thank you for joining us today to help recognize and uplift the women in our community who are performing great work. As we reflect on 2020 and the support and guidance that these women and others have given to help their fellow neighbor in Bloomington, it's encouraging to see what is possible in these unprecedented times. In lieu of our annual Women's History Month luncheon and Women's Leadership Development event, we wanted to find a way to gather and share the great work and accomplishments of our award recipients. Congratulations to all who have been recognized here today. The 2021 theme for this year's event is Valiant Women of the Vote Refusing to be Silenced, in which we continue to celebrate and honor the centennial of women's right to vote and the work done to get us here. With this, I hope you are leaving feeling inspired to honor your own unique set of skills and use them to do good and make a difference for women and others in our community. Also, if you haven't already, you can support 2 of our local women-owned businesses by ordering lunch and receiving a free dessert with purchase from Feast or Two Sticks Bakery, along with a complimentary gift from the Commission on the Status of Women sometime this week by using the code WHM2021. Thank you for joining us today, and be well.